A property hits the market in Naples, Florida for $295 million. On today's video, I'm going to tell you if this property will actually sell for this price, who buys a property for that price tag, and is the price tag even realistic? We're going to understand the actual value of this property, why it's worth so much. Many people on the internet are laughing at this listing price because they do not understand that somebody actually will buy this property. If it were to sell, it would be the most expensive residential property ever sold in the United States. The property is located in Naples, Florida, my hometown, and it is the southernmost property in Port Royal at the mouth of the Gordon River. To understand why this property demands such an extensive price tag, you have to understand that the value is not the home itself. It is actually in the land. In fact, in Port Royal, the most exclusive neighborhood in Naples, the person who actually buys this house will most likely be knocking it down to build an even bigger palace. In fact, the property next door is currently on the market for $63 million. And that is only for 1.5 acres roughly. The house that was there was demolished. And just like that, along the beach in Naples, there are properties ranging from 20 all the way up to $63 million. And these properties, the value is not the mansion, it is the actual land. There is currently a property in Naples, Florida that has been listed for almost a year, and they are asking $176 million. Most likely, the person that buys this property will be tearing it down. The value is not the mansion, it is simply the land. The individuals who are saying that somebody's going to pay $300 million roughly for a mansion, only to have it wiped out by a hurricane, do not understand that Naples, Florida recently had a 9-foot storm surge, and many of those mansions actually were wiped out by the hurricane, and that doesn't really make any difference at all. The value is in the land, not the actual structure. I remember many years ago I was working on a property in Port Royal, Naples, the neighborhood where this house sits, and I actually fell through a wall because there was 4-foot studs instead of 24 on center. I was removing a dryer and I fell through the wall. There was no insulation and it was 4 foot on center. Now you would imagine that $1 million house or $20 million house would be well built. However, the property, the value comes from the land that it sits on. The actual structure is insignificant. Thus, many times when people are doing remodels on these mansions, the workmanship really isn't all that great, and they really do not care. See, in Florida, systematically, homes keep getting bigger and bigger, and styles change. And somebody who's buying a $20, $40, $50 million mansion on the beach is going to have to be the latest style, which means that the house that's built today, 20 or 30 years down the line, will be outdated. It will not be contemporary, and thus it will be knocked down to build another structure. So it doesn't make sense to pay too much detail to anything other than the aesthetics. Quality really isn't a priority in these types of constructions. There's a lot of opinions on the internet, but they're not educated, they're not familiar with Naples, Florida, and they don't understand what type of person buys $100 million and up property. They've never been around that kind of money. They don't understand who these buyers are. But I'm from Naples. I've lived there over 20 years. I've worked in Port Royal on more than a few occasions, and I'm very familiar with the type of customer that will be buying this home. So let's talk a little bit about the buyer. Now that we understand that the value is the land, and what makes the land valuable, I'll explain to you afterwards. The person who's buying this property is not going to live in this house. These are beach homes that are used scarcely a few times a year, if that. Many times the owner himself will never actually stay in this property. There are plenty of full-time residents in Port Royal. However, a lot of these properties are bought up by people who have numerous houses in numerous countries. This is not going to be their primary residence. The person who buys this property is probably going to be tearing it down and building a colossal mansion. It's going to be somebody who will pay about $300 million for the property, probably going to build a $100 million property on this site, and thus they're going to have about a $400 million investment, with the idea that somebody else will buy the property for $500 million, and thus this may look like a complete utter waste of money. The vast majority of people who buy houses into the millions of millions do not lose money with their investments. They'll buy a house for $15 million, they'll sell it for $20 million, there's a $5 million profit. Now, this isn't like your house in an affordable neighborhood. It could take a year, 2, 3, or 4 years to find this buyer. This property is going to sit on the market for a while. In fact, the other property in Naples, that's $176 million, has been in the market for over a year. That's not alarming. That type of money doesn't just show up. It's a particular buyer. It's a specific person who has that kind of money. Whoever buys this piece of real estate in Naples, the price tag will be nothing more than an afterthought. It's not going to be a difficult decision. If they buy it, they want it, they're going to get it. The problem is that there's limited amount of people who have that kind of money. The good thing is that the people who have that kind of money are going to want a house in Naples. In Port Royal, the last piece of land by the Gordon River is prime real estate. Somebody will want that property, and most likely the person who buys that property will eventually sell it for more than they paid. In Naples, Florida, there are usually somewhere between 1,000 or more houses listed for over $1 million. So you have to understand that Naples, Florida is one of the largest millionaire housing markets in the world. It's larger than Miami, on par with places like San Francisco. That type of extreme wealth is only concentrated in a few places throughout the United States, along the California coast, along the Florida coast, a few places in the Northeast. There's only a handful of places where that kind of money exists. Some of the customers that I have worked for in Port Royal perhaps live in Russia or another country, and they are in the United States maybe once a year, if that, and if they come, it's a private matter and nobody knows that they're on the property. They use these properties for private events, special meetings with other people, and thus these properties are many times used more by other people than the actual owners themselves. Many times these people who travel internationally are going to be hosting their friends on the property, or it's some type of statement to other wealthy people of saying, hey, if you're going to be in Naples, Florida, I got an exclusive property you can stay at. And it's used many times almost as a somewhat of a status symbol to impress, negotiate, or accommodate with other wealthy individuals. Could an extraordinarily wealthy person buy this property and actually live in it as their main home? It's definitely possible. Is it likely? Extremely unlikely. There's going to be a lot of international buyers who are going to look at this property. Its geographical location, stepping back to understand why is this property worth so much money? Well, let me explain to you. We understand the use of this property. We understand the buyer. Why the price tag? Naples, Florida is the last city along the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. On the east coast, you have Miami. On the west coast, you have Naples. Naples is the last urban enclave in western Florida. There are two routes in North America: the land route through Mexico and the sea route through the Caribbean islands. Many of the maneuvers of the ultra wealthy are yachts. They don't use land routes, they don't use airplanes, they travel through the sea. Naples, because of its geographical location, has access to the Caribbean route through the Caribbean, and it has access to the Gulf of Mexico because the tip of Yucatan, Cancun, is not too far from Naples. Thus, Naples has access to two of the most vital trading routes of an entire continent. And we're not talking about commerce value, we're talking about individuals who travel globally. Sometimes the documents that they carry or the items that they carry are extraordinarily expensive items. These are people who trade in illicit substances, fine materials like gold, diamonds, large sums of cash. There's no telling what these wealthy individuals are transporting from one part of the planet to another. Sometimes it's documents that are very important. Whatever the deal is, Naples' geographical location gives it access to some of the most important travel routes in the entire world. Now, despite Naples being extraordinarily fancy, rich, and safe, after living in Naples for 20 years, I can tell you that there's a lot more illegal activity going on in Naples among the ultra wealthy than you could imagine. Thus, it wouldn't be out of the question that one of the reasons why this particular piece of land is so valuable is because it could easily be used for whatever type of purpose. Many times the property owner is not aware it's taking place on the property because they are accommodating other parties. So I'm not exactly saying that the people who own these properties know what's going on in these properties, but because of the exclusive nature of these properties, there's a secretive nature about them. There's a sense of trust because of how exclusive these properties are. It lends itself well. Besides the fact that a local judge would have to be out of their mind to pull a search warrant on one of these properties in Port Royal that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, it just is a very exclusive private venue. Whatever the reason, because of its geographical location with access to both of these important travel routes, Naples, Florida has an incredible value. And I've seen in Naples, Florida, that some of these properties that are very exclusive have at times been used for some questionable activities. In the past, we had prohibition. In the 70s, Naples, Florida was known for having a lot of importation from Colombia. Bottom line, there's no secret that Pablo Escobar himself hung out in exclusive properties in Miami, Florida. Thus, the term Miami, that was city that was built on dirty money. Let's not forget on the other coast, Naples, its counterpart, that doesn't exist anywhere else in the state, and that is pristine coastline. Naples has more preserved coastline, places that will never be developed, than anywhere else in Florida. You're talking about pristine natural beaches, warm weather beaches, something that in December gives Naples more value than anywhere else in the country, being that the water temperature here, even in the winter, is good enough to go for a swim. Owning a piece of real estate in Port Royal means that you could easily be in the 10,000 islands, other exclusive islands that are not developed, not accessible by vehicle. Thus, only people with a boat are able to access these particular islands. So you have access to some of the most incredible tropical recreation anywhere in the United States. Tarpon fishing, shark fishing, tournaments and events revolving around fishing have been drawing wealthy people to Southwest Florida for hundreds of years. Thomas Edison, Henry Ford are some of the names that for hundreds of years have flocked to Southwest Florida to have a slice of a tropical island paradise during the winter months in the United States. Naples, Florida is already home to some of the wealthiest individuals on the planet. Names like Donald Trump, international politicians, and other people in government, as well as celebrities and famous individuals, have homes in Naples, Florida, or have owned them at some time or another. Naples, Florida is one of the safest cities in the entire state, the county of Collier having one of the lowest murder rates of any county in the state of Florida, well below the state average. Thus, safety is a key feature in living in this area. If you look at Port Royal geographically, you'll see that it's a peninsula within the city of Naples. There is literally one way in, one way out, and that way out takes you through downtown Naples, some of the most well-patrolled streets anywhere in the United States, where both private and city and state police patrol. And for every marked unit that you may see, chances are there are more unmarked individuals patrolling these communities. Thus, it is one of the safest, most patrolled and surveillance places anywhere in the United States. And that is the type of exclusive safety that a very wealthy individual is going to want. With governors, presidents, and other powerful people in governments routinely having a presence in Naples, Florida, it is understood that there's not only surveillance that you can visually appreciate, but perhaps in the background there is more going on with the safety there than meets the simple eye. So while to the average Joe, a $300 million property seems something far-fetched, the buyer exists, and the buyer will likely take a long time to buy this property. It's not going to sell overnight. It could be on the market for a year or two, but eventually somebody will buy this property. I guarantee you that, and most likely the person who buys this property won't even live there. Real estate into the hundreds of millions is not an alien concept in Naples, Florida. The most expensive real estate in the United States has normally been right outside of Los Angeles, up in the hills. I recently went up there, and I can tell you I really wasn't impressed. The area near Monterey, California did impress me, but even there, the real estate values, despite having, I believe, more natural beauty than Naples, it doesn't have more strategic value than Naples. There's currently a home being built in Naples. I know a few people that are working on this property, and they're telling me that the price tag to build this home is going to be somewhere around $200 million. So basically, you're just seeing land that's extremely valuable finally starting to have properties that reflect that value. There's going to be more to come. It'll become like a competition. I believe somebody will buy this property. They're going to knock it down, and they're going to create one of the most exclusive properties on earth. And somebody else is going to try to do something bigger. It's a competition for these rich guys to see who can do the most extravagant thing. So yes, there is a buyer out there for this property, and I do believe it's going to sell. It has to sell. But keep in mind too that it doesn't have to sell today or tomorrow. This could be on the market for a very long time. The type of wealthy individuals that buy these properties, to be able to say, oh, I own the last house in Port Royal on the pass, there's no price tag that you can put on that. It's a level of elite status to impress other people that are within that realm that simply gives the person who buys this property a level of social status among wealthy people that is beyond the comprehension of a person like you. So while you may not understand the type of buyer, the type of property, or why people are paying this kind of money for this land, you should just know that there is somebody who's going to pay it. There are currently people who are paying millions and millions of dollars to this piece of land. And if you cannot afford this type of property, you've never worked for these type of people, you've never met them, then your opinion about what they can and will not do is irrelevant. Keep in mind that the richest people on earth have hundreds of billions, not hundreds of millions, hundreds of billions. And likely there are billionaires in other countries and other parts of the world whose net worth is probably not on this Forbes list. This kind of money does exist, and there are people who can buy this property and it wouldn't even be 1% of their net worth. For one of these ultra billionaires to buy this piece of real estate in Naples is the equivalent of me deciding if I'm buying a hamburger at McDonald's. Literally, that is how much of a percentage of their net worth it is. So simply because you do not understand this buyer, the buyer exists. The buyer can buy this house and it not even be 1% of their net worth. So really, it's not like it's a lot of money for them. Another concept difficult for people like me and you to understand is that there really are not too many places where you can invest that type of money. That's a large sum of money. In the case of buying this land, knocking down the structures, and just having an empty lot near the beach that just has to get mowed and cleaned up a few times a year, that is an incredible way to store a massive amount of money into a piece of property or something that has almost no liability. Even if a hurricane were to come and destroy the mansion, you still have the land underneath it, and that's not going anywhere. Well, why not just buy 10,000 acres? Well, that 10,000 acre piece of property has to be maintained. There's so many things that can go wrong. People could trespass on the property. But if you just have this 10 acre piece of land, which is very manageable, and it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's just sitting there by the beach in a very safe neighborhood where nobody's going to dump garbage on the land, nobody's going to litter on the land, it's just a manageable piece of land, you start to discover that the liabilities are so limited with that type of investment, to where even if a hurricane were to come and literally wash away the property, there's still no liability to them comparatively to something else they could do with that kind of money. So let's say you have $20 million and you just want to put it somewhere secure. You buy an acre of land near the beach in an area like Naples. Nobody's going to litter. You just pay a landscaping company to go out there, mow the grass, clean it up a few times a month or whatever. That right there is just a small, compact way to store millions of dollars. Nobody can steal it. Nobody can deface it. It's just not going anywhere. Vice versa, you could buy a $20,000 quarter acre piece of land and somebody could dump a bunch of dump truck tires on your property, and now it's going to cost you $5,000 to get rid of it. There's 25% of your investment gone because somebody came and destroyed your property. Those types of things are not going to happen in Naples, Florida. And even if somebody were to dump truck tires on an empty lot in Naples, Florida, first of all, they would possibly never be able to get away with it because there's so many cameras and security. But even if they did get away with it, it would be just a small percentage of the property's value, that it would be insignificant. So while it may not make sense to you, to somebody, to buy this piece of land for $200 million or whatever, and it gets washed away by a hurricane and they lose a $40 million property that's sitting on top of it, that really is insignificant to them, because actually it's the land that's got the value. And if the mansion is gone, where it's a clean canvas to the next person that's buying that property, it might actually give you even more value. Difficult for the normal person to understand, but that is how these type of investments work. And even if you just step it back a notch, you could buy the land, build a house, and it might cost you a few $1,000,000 to build a house. But once that house is built on that land, you could possibly make a $4 to $5 million profit instantly by putting a house on it. It's just a round business. So yes, it will sell.